Welcome to Season 2 of the To Health With That podcast, where we break up big health topics into small bites. I'm Amy, and this season I'll share all the tips, tricks, and hacks you need to get healthy with an MTHFR mutation in a step-by-step, week-by-week process. I can't wait. This week, let's talk about starting 5-LMTHF, or SAMe, with MTHFR. So this is it, the big methylfolate start. You've got all of your preliminaries done, folic acid is out of your diet, or at least 80% out. It's out of your supplements too, 100% out of there, please. You've ramped up the natural folate from food sources, and you're tracking those symptoms. You've even got a good background of other B vitamins on board. Now, drum roll please, the moment you've been waiting for. Starting 5-LMTHF or SAMe. Now I know, no other vitamin gets this sort of wind up, so let's talk about it. First off, I do want everybody to try a tiny dose of 5-LMTHF, but if you hit a deal breaker scenario, then it can be a good idea to switch to SAMe instead, or folinic acid, or any other MTHFR safe strategy, and we will talk about those in a few weeks. But if this happens, it's best to treat SAMe the same way you would 5-LMTHF, because it can cause a lot of the same symptoms if the dose is wrong. So follow the same process there as well. All right, now let's talk about different things that can happen in a methylfolate start. So, 5-LMTHF deal breaker scenarios, and 5-LMTHF, by the way, is methylfolate. I use those terms synonymously. Deal breaker number 1, your tiny starter dose is too much already. This is a thing that happens. You start out with a tiny baby dose of 5-L-methyltetrahydrofolate, and right out of the gate, you're starting to feel crazy pants. Wired, wound up, uncomfortable, restless, hyper, anxious, irritable. These are all words that I've heard or experienced to describe this dose is too much feeling. Also, it can be physical symptoms like heart palpitations, racing heartbeat, flushed skin, hot feeling, prickly or itchy, difficulty sleeping. It usually means that even this tiny baby starter dose is pushing your body too fast. Now, I do want you to be honest. If your tiny baby starter dose was 1,000 micrograms, then reassess your idea of a starter dose. But if it really was a small dose, like 200 micrograms or less, then you might just not be able to tolerate the 5-LMTHF. For some people in this category, even small amounts of natural folate in foods push them over the edge. If this is you, stop the methylfolate and wait a few weeks. We'll talk about what other options there are for non-tolerators. I promise. Deal breaker scenario number 2. Methylfolate makes you fall into the darkest, blackest pit of despair possible. This happens very rarely, but it happens. This happens to a small segment of the population whose serotonin levels are perilously low to begin with. And adding folate of any kind drops the bottom out of this neurotransmitter pathway. It's interesting because folate actually increases serotonin production, which sounds like it should make a positive impact, but it also upregulates or increases something called SERT even more. SERT, spelled S-E-R-T, or actually abbreviated S-E-R-T, is a selective serotonin reuptake transporter that helps to clear serotonin out of your synapses and pulls it back into the releasing neuron. When SERT activity is increased, the serotonin you have becomes less effective because your body doesn't get very much time to enjoy it before it's gathered up. If your serotonin is extremely low, this can push you over to the edge and make it just not worth it to take folate. We talked about this a little bit in Season 1, Episode 12, called Methylfolate Makes Me Feel Bad, and that one's a good review of the whole serotonin situation. If you happen to hit one of these 2 deal breaker scenarios, then stop methylfolate and look into an alternative. The alternative could be folinic acid or SAMe or something else. Stay tuned for more on that topic in a few weeks. Until then, just hang tight with the other B vitamins, no folic acid, food sources of natural folate as much as you can tolerate, and healthy lifestyle choices. So most people who start 5-LMTHF won't hit anything like a deal-breaker scenario. Those happen to a tiny minority of people, especially when you've done all of the groundwork properly. But even when things go right, starting methylfolate can feel weird. When I first started, the things I noticed were nothing like what I was expecting. I felt a bit buzzy, in a pleasant way, my vision seemed brighter, and my head felt strange, like my physical head, not my brain or mind. No idea why my head felt strange, but in good news, all of those feelings wore off after 2-3 days. Here are some other things that I've heard from folks just starting methylfolate. Don't notice anything at all. I feel totally normal. Great. Ringing in the ears, more talkative, bit grumpy or moody, sweat more, dreams are more vivid, and I feel like a rock star. Awesome. Let's face it, we're moving around some big internal chess pieces here, so a few minor changes can be totally normal, and for most people they go away really quickly. By far the biggest group either feels nothing or feels great. There's another group who feels great at first, and then, a couple of weeks down the road, start feeling like they're taking too much, like that anxious, hyped up, over-energized feeling. That's also normal. So what can I do to make this easier? Oh, by the way, if that happens where 2 weeks down the road the dose is too much, then we will actually look at decreasing the dose or changing your dosing strategy. Back to what can I do to make this easier? Honestly, I'm erring on the side of overly cautious, so most of you will start 5-L-methyltetrahydrofolate and wonder what all the fuss was about. That is completely okay. I would rather you were over-prepared than under-prepared. Also, it's likely that as you're working through the MTHFR process, there will be some point at which you take too high a dose of 5-LMTHF. Since you're prepared, you'll know what's going on and not freak out. At least, that's my goal. Having said that, if you tend to be sensitive to supplements, or if you just want to give your body the best start you can, then make sure you're doing some of the basics. Drink plenty of water, maybe add a little lemon juice or a pinch of sea salt for optimal hydration. Sleep more. Sleep helps everything. Don't overstuff your schedule during this time. Take it a bit easy if you can. There are also options if you do take too high a dose of 5-LM-methyltetrahydrofolate. So during this whole process of working with your MTHFR, it's really normal to have feelings of too high a dose at least once, if not several times throughout the journey. It's not a problem. As far as we know, you're not actually doing any harm to your system, it just feels weird. What it is great information. Your body's telling you something, and all you have to do is listen. This is your signal that the dose is a little too high, and you could decrease it. Here's some ways to manage this. Number 1, decrease your dose, right? Decreasing your dose can mean finding a lower dose supplement, or finding some kind of alternate schedule like 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 2 days off. Just depends on how your body responds. Number 2, stop your dose entirely. If your symptoms are extreme, this is the best course of action. Just stop. Take some other steps to help your body calm down. Reassess after a couple of weeks. Exercise. If you're in the middle of symptoms of a too high dose, exercising can help your body to use up some of those methyl groups and get you through the strange symptoms faster. Niacin can also help. 50 milligrams of niacin in the straight niacin form helps to eat up those excess methyl groups as well and can help to relieve symptoms. The only problem is that it causes its own symptoms, which is a flushing reaction. It basically feels like a hot flash, complete with red face, itchy or prickly skin, sweating, and generally feeling super weird. Doesn't last long, but it's very vivid. You can redose niacin after an hour, but don't do this more than 3 times total in a day, and keep an eye on your blood pressure because niacin can really drop it down. In any event, this week is the week you start, so make sure 5-LMTHF is the only thing you change right now, and that you're starting with a low dose, 200 micrograms or less. Also, keep symptom tracking, make note of anything new that pops up. This should be the only change you make for at least 2 weeks, but 4 weeks is better, just to give your body time to get used to this new thing and to tell you if the dose becomes too much. Remember that symptoms can pop up after a week or even 2 of being on the same dose, so don't make any sudden moves. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this process with me. I'm delighted to have you and excited to keep moving forward.